They say you running plays, that's ish talk. You say you getting paid, that's ish talk. You see me with my babe, that's ish talk. The money in that way, that's ish talk.
Welcome to another episode of The Lord Show, Ish Talk TV, representing for the DMV, doing how it's supposed to be. I hope you got some kush at the crib, some cat in the bed, and some cash in your pocket. What more can be said? It's the last days, guys, but this show, we're talking about Trump cabinet picks and what does woke mean to you, and thoughts on how the mainstream media is just dealing with Trump winning. And I don't know if you guys seen these meltdowns, but it's pretty epic. But yeah, let us know what you think. I got three special guests. One is a former policy analyst for DC Council member Trayon White, Dante Daniel. We also got a conservative, first time female conservative co-host of the Pop in Politics, Yana. Thank you. First time. And the
Thank you for having
OG
me.
and the OG, Vice President Terps for Bikes at UMD. And my man is a third Vice President of the Federation of College Republicans. My old job. Give it up for Nick Marks. What's up? Welcome back.
Everyone. Hope everyone is having a great, Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, man. It's Thanksgiving. Things are we got to deal with turkeys being pardoned, but we are going into World War III. As a Democrat in the city, what did you think about the election of Harris? And actually, hold on, guys, where is Kamala? Have you guys anybody seen where she is?
She just made a statement, I think, either yesterday, was it?
Earlier today, she had a
Earlier
Zoom call.
today.
She,
Okay.
she was on the Zoom.
Mhm.
They got her on Zoom now. Okay.
It's on Twitter. The Democratic Party tweeted it out. You can find it.
It looked very tired.
I feel sorry for that woman. She tried her best. They gave her I think she went as far as she could. But
I do think she tried really hard. Yeah, she definitely tried, and that was like her limit, and she couldn't even, I mean, that was too much for her. That's just the feeling I was getting.
she's overwhelmed. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. So far, so much that the laughing can get you. But I'm gonna get to Dante. But I forgot to tell you guys, I voted for Jill Stein, and I voted Democrat. The rest on the bottom. But I feel like things are changing. We have the mainstream media. We have Morning Joe. We have even The View are starting to wake up and realize it's time. The world is changing. But Dante, what's your thoughts, brother?
On
On how the mainstream is dealing with Trump winning, and what you see, and what your thoughts on the election. I didn't talk to you after the election, so I'm curious on that part too.
Okay, well, I have several thoughts. One, I will begin with my thoughts on the election, or just even the campaigning of Vice President Harris. I believe it was poorly calculated. Um, I believe, in a sense, she was somewhat set up for failure. As a Black female in the US, she probably was the biggest outlier to acquiring the presidential position. So if you were to think in terms of laps of completion, and you had to run 10 laps total, I believe she was on lap one.
Damn, bro.
Just historically, like we haven't had a female president. So therefore that sets her back, right? We've had a Black male president before a female, white or Black. So therefore, I just believe I believe Joe Biden was fairly selfish to even consider running. So therefore, you put the biggest outlier away from the presidential position to run, and then you gave her 90 days to campaign. So that was a double. Um, just you compound it to the outlier, and in a sense, you just doubled down on her not actually acquiring that position. I never thought she was going to win. I'm gonna be honest with you. And
Did you say that publicly though?
did I say it publicly? Yeah. I speak objectively about politics. I actually look at the politics. I don't feed into like the pitting of corners and I'm this, I'm that. I'm actually independent. But yeah, so I just feel like she was somewhat set up for failure. I have a problem with the Democratic Party and their ability to not think bigger picture, as in moving on, transitioning once you hit a certain age. I think I said the last podcast that the biggest life expectancy drop in your life is from the age of 81 to 82. It's like 13% or something of that nature.
But the
Biden
whole
was at,
time they were hiding him.
yeah,
I
yeah, for
can't
the
wait
most
for that
part.
documentary, man, just to see what the
Yeah.
hell were they doing.
So, he hit that age. Trump will hit that age during this time period as well. But that's your biggest life expectancy drop is about 13% throughout your life. That would be the biggest drop you ever had if you make it to 81, right? And so it was fairly selfish of him. It was fairly selfish of Ruth Ginsburg.
Yeah,
Yeah, fairly selfish of her.
but they praising her. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I think she tainted her legacy as far as the Supreme Court seating. I don't believe in any one party dominating the Supreme Court seating. I believe in bipartisanship. So I believe in like 5-4, even
She,
6-3,
she.
maybe. I don't want it too Democrat. I don't want it too Republican. I believe in a balance, right? I just believe in that there. I don't believe in one party's ideals and values dominating this country as it is a diverse country. So. Yeah, so I just believe it was poorly campaigned, it was poorly calculated, and the Democratic Party needs to do a big reassessment of the who. The who is in place, conducting strategy in a sense. And you got 4 years to think about it, right? Or three
Mm,
at least. So, and then in regard to the reaction, I would say the fear mongering has begun,
there
right?
you
Like
go. There you go.
anything Trump hasn't really said too much, right? But
Right.
a lot of reports, right? And in a sense, it's just anything that's announced that Trump has done. Now, mind you, some of his appointees are it's a bit disturbing, but for the most part, for the most part, I will say that the fear mongering has begun. Trying to you know, scare people with anything that may happen and say this may be the possibility of it. And nobody knows just yet. You have to wait until he's read in. And once he's read and sworn in, then we can begin the games and begin the actual reporting of what actually occurred or what is to come. But right now, I just think it's too soon to begin the fear mongering. But I already see it. And I don't really pay it, like, again, I pay attention more so local politics versus uh, federal. So that's all I have.
Yana, did the Democrats double down on stupid on losing?
It
It's like
seems
they
like
wanted to.
it. It
Yeah,
seems like it. I,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
they did.
I like to watch this one show on YouTube. It's out of Australia, Leftists Losing It.
Oh,
I mean, I really got on it like after the elections every morning. That's it just it picks me up in the morning. So, and she's showing all the host is showing all these people who are just can't handle either just regular people or the media. And it just seems they're losing it every single day. Also on social media. So I follow just for entertainment, I follow Socialists of America on Facebook, and literally every single day they're posting how much they hate Trump and how
mm.
Trump is constantly on their minds. So it's nothing about policy, it's nothing about what would they want this country to be like. It's all about this identity politics. What has been, that's how it has been for the last 4 years. It's just been all about the personality, Trump's personality. Now it's about his nominees. So they're just picking on their personal lives or specific maybe convictions that they have rather than actual policy. And they can't handle they I think they were living in the alternate
I agree.
reality
Yes, yes.
and
Yeah.
did not realize that their reality is different from people around the country. So, and they just can't handle it.
Yeah.
They have this idea that how they want the country to be, and it's a Marxist idea.
Mm.
And was it Dante?
Mhm.
He, so um it was interesting that you said that you would like to see the Supreme Court to be balanced, and I probably would have agreed with you maybe even 5 years ago or so. But
Mhm.
it just seems like just from the conservative, and I became a conservative over time,
Mhm.
from a conservative perspective, it just seems the Democrat Party has been moving away from the regular American and moving to the left and coming up with ideas that most Americans do not support. So, when you say Democrat, Supreme Court being part Democrat, I have no problem with that if they're more like a classical liberal
Mm.
rather than, more of a Marxist socialist kind of liberal.
Yeah, I mean, to weigh in my piece, there's two really interesting thoughts here. And I actually talked about this. This was a realignment election in every way possible. The electorate in this country is so diverse to where you will never get a 1980 or 1984 landslide again. But if you look at Donald Trump, he improved his margins with every single voting group. He had the best performance among minority voters of any Republican since I think 1968 or 1972. And from looking back on it, I was at the polls on election day, and nearly every single middle-aged man that was walking into the polls, regardless of their race, regardless of how much money they were making, were saying they were going to vote for Donald Trump. And even a lot of moderate Democrats told me that they were as well. And so I kind of took a step back and I thought, well, let's look at the past 4 years, right, and what the Democratic Party has become. And I think this is there's a really interesting Politico article out this morning that said that addressed all of the issues around the campaign, but it didn't talk about the elephant in the room, which is just that Kamala was not the right candidate for the Democrats to run in this election. This administration, regardless of what you think of Joe Biden, was unpopular. And I said this to Ish on this podcast multiple times, did not do enough to differentiate herself from an unpopular administration. And when she was asked what she would do differently, she said that she wouldn't change a thing. Okay. So you have the perception of a world on fire, hot wars in Europe and the Middle East, a situation in the South China Sea that's becoming more untenable when Xi Jinping has said that he wants to invade Taiwan by 2027. And at home, people can barely afford basic necessities. And
Mhm.
I agree. I think this election was Joe Biden's fault. He was elected in 2020 and he said he would be a transitional president. And at the time, nobody knew what that meant. Does that mean giving Kamala Harris the nomination? Does that mean an open primary? My sources, very close to Mark Halperin, were telling me the Democratic Party did not want to nominate Vice President Harris for exactly this reason,
Mm.
that she is not necessarily a terrible candidate 4 years down the road, but she will be saddled with an administration that is unpopular against a president that is more popular than ever before. A poll came out this weekend. Donald Trump has a 54% approval rating. Over 60% of Americans approve of his transition so far. And Dante had a very astute observation. Donald Trump has been largely quiet the past 2 weeks. His
Yeah.
strategy since the election has been to nominate his cabinet and let them play it out, almost like a real life episode of The Apprentice. And that's what Donald Trump loves. He
The
loves watching
Gates.
his
Yeah.
nominees battling it out, right? But if I'm a Democrat, and I'm not, the race to watch is the DNC chair, right? Who is the next head of the party? And there are a few names being floated, including the former Maryland governor, Martin O'Malley, who, if he was the head of the DNC as a Republican, I would be the happiest man alive because that guy was a terrible governor. But the battle
Well,
within
I
the
think
Democratic
also they
Party,
think about Rahm Emanuel too, or something like that.
yeah, Rahm Emanuel, who I would be terrified of because Rahm is incredibly well spoken. He knows what it takes to win an election. He can cobble together progressives and there's kind of the story after 2012 where the RNC took a step back and Reince Priebus, who went on to be one of Donald Trump's chief of staffs, wrote a post-mortem as to why Mitt Romney lost. And it ended up being the complete opposite of what Donald Trump went out and did.
Mm.
And doing research on the voting numbers, right, for Donald Trump to go and pull 36% out of Wayne County, which is where Detroit is, and close to a quarter of the votes in Philadelphia is remarkable. And the question for the Republican Party is that coalition something that builds long term in the midterms 4 years down the road? I don't think so. I think it's a Trump phenomenon. But That being said, um, the Democratic Party has been in situations like this before, where after 1984 they got wiped. They sat down and they said, "We need to find a candidate that can win us back middle class voters." Those Reagan Democrats. They wound up with Bill Clinton 8 years later. So it's not impossible for the Democrats to come back from a lot of this. But when you're running around campaigning with Liz Cheney, right, and then Arab voters in Michigan say, "Well, I don't like Donald Trump because of his stances on Israel, but her father is the number one signifier of the military industrial complex that got us involved in Iraq, which was arguably the worst foreign policy disaster in the history of this country." When she's running around pushing these issues that people in academia, where I go to college, really care about, such as the transgender issue, right, which Trump was able to exploit. The reason why the transgender ad was so effective, and there are Harris operatives that have come out and said this, was because it wasn't about the transgender issue itself. It was about a lack of priorities from the Harris campaign, right? As a teacher, we study something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? People will never be able to think on a higher level if they can't afford groceries. If it is hard for them to
Yeah.
put gas, if it is hard for them to put gas in their car. That's what Donald Trump did. And that's why Susie Wiles, by the way, is the incoming chief of staff. Because Donald Trump took a step back and he basically said, "Okay, we have an unpopular candidate. I'm going to look like I'm enjoying myself. And if I lose, I lose." And I honestly think Kamala ran a pretty decent campaign for having 100 days to cobble something together. I think some of her outreach among celebrities and
She
the
had the
amount of money that she,
Swifties. Beyonce, come
yeah,
on, man. How can you
the
lose?
the the amount of money that she spent is somewhat staggering. Having been involved in local political races, to spend $1.5 billion and lose an election is fairly impressive. But let's be honest, Kamala is talking about running in 2028. She's not going to run, and if she
Bollocks.
runs, she's not going to win. She's not a strong candidate. There are other people that could have run in this election, and I think they would have won. Um, but again, I think the Democratic Party, I think there's been a lot of doom and gloom, and we see this in the mainstream media too, to where if Donald Trump is popular, there's no getting around it. In order for mainstream media to stay relevant, they have to essentially kiss the ring. So when Joe Scarborough and Mia flew down to Mar-a-Lago, I knew Donald Trump was relishing in that. He said,
Maybe
"You
like
spent
this.
9 years calling me Hitler, and now you're bending the ring. And by the
Yes.
way, why are you calling me Hitler?"
They
And
got a
then
lot of backlash from that.
having Joe Biden set up a transition meeting with literally Hitler. It doesn't
Sir,
make any
yeah.
sense.
That's,
But if I'm the Democratic Party, I take a step back and I say, look,
Mhm.
and I think Dante hit it on the head. Donald Trump's not even president yet. John Fetterman said it right. Stop freaking out before we know what he's going to do. Have discussions about his cabinet nominees, and we'll get to that later if you want, right? Discuss whether or not it's a good idea to have RFK at HHS or Tulsi Gabbard at DNI.
Mhm.
But the man's not even president yet. Stop overreacting. We don't even have all the states have not even finished counting their ballots yet. So, and elections in American history take a very long time to digest from. If I was a Democrat, I would focus my attention to winnable seats in 2026 and try and build the coalition from the ground up. Donald Trump will say stupid things, and I have a feeling that once he starts implementing, deportation programs, the images that come out of them might start to sway public opinion against him. I'm not saying I'm necessarily against all of them, but
AOC is gonna be crying.
you know,
And at
and
the
also and so I think in 2028 it'll be a large field, and you'll have a lot of people running. And I think that right now, watch the DNC chair race. If it's Rahm, I think it's a signal from the party establishment that they
mm,
think that there are issues they will work with Donald Trump on, because they have to get anything done.
well,
But I don't think it's all necessarily gloom and doom.
all right.
I
Wait,
just
do,
I
do
think a lot of people overreacted.
do one of you guys wanna piggyback on that before I go in? Dante, Yana? Oh, anybody thoughts on what he said?
Yeah,
Because he was cooking. He was cooking.
yeah, he was. Nicholas is sharp. But yeah, what provides a sense of hesitancy about the Democratic Party and their in the foreseeable future is, or what somewhat taints my optimism about the Democratic Party in the foreseeable future is they're somewhat going right back to the same strategy they've been trying to utilize for like the last year, even when Joe Biden was running, with the fear mongering once again and how the media is reporting. And it's just like stop. pause, like, and as Nicholas said, and this is the opportunity to regroup and focus on 2026 and mobilize and develop these coalitions. The more so, in a sense, one, you're going to have to work with Trump. Like you're just going to have to work with the Republican Party. In addition to, um, in order to garner any level of mobilizing. I don't want to necessarily overreact because this is how politics somewhat shifts in a sense. Like he mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I'm very familiar with because I have a social work background. But um, again, when you see, in a sense, I want to say we're almost at the trillion mark, if not trillions of dollars going out to Ukraine and like you
Yep.
said, people are barely unable. I'm currently at a shelter right now working, actually, but people are currently unable to afford basic necessities that can somewhat. I'll give you this. Donald Trump approval rating was 34% January 2021. That's his last year, 34%. And yet there was a shift, you know. And I don't necessarily blame Biden in some of his international politics and not necessarily his ability to hone in
Mm.
on, you know, the local area in a sense. So that's all I have to say.
So to comment on that, it just the sense I was getting from this conversation, it seems like everyone in this panel is pretty open-minded and like someone mentioned, independent. And so I think that this is the issue with the Democrat Party is that they are not open-minded. They're not like
Yep.
the average American. They actually have an agenda they do not want to work with Republicans or conservative people or Christian people, like people who really real believers, um, because that is not part of their ideology anymore. And this is something that we talk about on our show a lot. And because we as conservatives, we would be happy to work with someone who is pro-America, who wants this country to be great, regardless of what party they identify with. It doesn't really matter. But the problem is that, and Obama has said that when he was making one of his speeches I think when he just became president, he wanted to fundamentally change the United States of America. So this is what we see on the right is that the Democrats of today, they want to fundamentally change the United States of America, and they
Yep.
do not want to work with anyone on the other side because we are in the way of where they're trying to get us to.
Yep. And the only thing I want to bring up real quick ish is a tweet from Bernie Sanders on the 19th of October, 2021. Or sorry, the 21st of October, 2019. Tulsi Gabbard has put her life on the line to defend this country. People can disagree on issues, but it is outrageous for anyone to suggest that Tulsi is a foreign asset. And I just want to leave it at that, given the conversations we'll be having about cabinet nominees.
Yeah, let's get to that. But I wanted to end on with like the media. They and especially the viewers, they were been told for like 4 years that or they were told that Hillary's going to win. It's going to be a landslide, and then what happened? Then Harris is going to win, and then you can see on social media or mainstream that they are losing these shows are losing their viewership, and they thinking about getting rid of MSNBC. And when it comes to the Democrat Party, it's like after when someone goes to jail, you think that they're supposed to like learn their lesson. But I feel like for the Democrats, when they go to jail, when they lose, they just get sneakier and they try to think of other ways to be sneaky or to do crimes. But instead of learning to listen to your voters. But let's get to the cabinet picks. Uh, as a policy person, Dante, what'd you think about the cabinet picks? Come on, bro. Oh, mute.
I believe he's using his autonomy, his authority for his appointees. I wouldn't necessarily say they're subject matter experts, but it's not
Depart
like
Department of Education.
Well, definitely. Yeah, I watched I saw a video like is her name Linda McMahon or
Linda McMahon.
Linda McMahon like getting power driven on WWE.
Her
Like
her husband her husband is Vince McMahon, so you know.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I know her husband. Yeah, Vince
Yeah.
McMahon. We grew up no well, I grew up knowing
Yeah.
him when it was WWF. I'm probably a little older, but um yeah, it's interesting. So I had a conversation about that, but what I'm fearful of concerning some of these cabinet picks is a unwavering
Oh.
um in a sense you have people that have not necessarily truly been involved in politics historically, therefore, and are at an age where in a sense they're at the retiree age, right? Like so I'm fearful that they'll move and act unapologetically, right? Like they'll more so uh in a sense I guess make their recommendations, make their changes, make their amendment, whatever legislation, follow through with their legislative agenda unapologetically and
Wow.
um, not necessarily anticipate maybe unintended consequences of legislation. The good, the bad, whatever necessarily may be the agenda of the party. I can't say what it is. I mean, there's a lot of rumors, but I don't want to, it has not been set out, right? Like there's nothing on paper. I think
Well,
Project 2025 is a fear-mongering tactic as well. It was a group of conservatives that created this, but it could be a group of Democrats that make Project 2026, and it doesn't necessarily mean that a Democratic president was going to adhere to this playbook in a sense, right? But you know, I'm just a bit fearful of that in a sense. You know, Linda McMahon can go through with whatever her legislative agenda may be, and after Trump's 4 years, move on in life, and there's no accountability in the long term, in a sense.
mm,
Like it won't necessarily hinder her political career in the future,
right,
right?
right.
Oh, you did this wrong.
Yeah.
Like, like George Bush and the war on Iraq will somewhat always taint his legacy, right? Like he was somewhat reelected because presidents, I believe all presidents have been reelected for a second term during in the midst of war.
Right.
Maybe one wasn't, but I'm just fearful of that with some of these nominations. I do like the government, the efficiency office, or I
The
know it's not
Which
supposed to be an
the Doge
agency.
or something. Yeah.
those
Yeah, yeah, I do like that because I'm just participating on it. I mean, being on the Hill for a couple
Uh,
years, I do see a lot of wasteful spending. So it'd be nice to see that. I don't like to necessarily see that, a billionaire and um, another like it would like to see an average Joe or
right.
somebody that's literally a subject matter expert. And it's like, well, Elon Musk is a subject matter. No, Elon Musk has a team of subject matter experts around him. Like, let's not like let's not skew the two. He has a team. He has ideas, but his team actually does the work. It's no different from administrations and presidents. So, yeah, we'll just see. Next steps. I try not to anticipate. I will wait for the political agenda, um, and we'll see. So that's all I
Mm.
have.
Yeah, I want to talk about the word loyalist because this is what you will hear about Trump's cabinet. Okay,
Yeah,
having been
I
around
felt like
politics,
Dante was trying
there
to
is
say
not a single
loyalist.
there is not a single politician that has ever put together a cabinet that is not loyal to them. And I think the reason why you're seeing Trump put together this cabinet the way that he has, right, including people that are very questionable in their qualifications. In my opinion, I generally like all of the cabinet except for Kirsty Noem as Homeland Security, which makes zero sense. And obviously, some of RFK's statements as a conservative to me are a little,
Hide your
eh.
dogs.
but I do want to talk about qualifications vis-a-vis this current cabinet, right? So there's been all of this conversation about whether or not somebody like Pete Hegseth, who is a 2 times Bronze Star recipient and graduate of Princeton, is qualified to handle DoD. And I think you can question his managerial experience. But Lloyd Austin disappeared for 5 days and let a Chinese spy balloon fly across the entire United States. And he's arguably the most qualified defense secretary in American history. And my favorite example
He
is
had a
Pete
heart
Buttigieg.
attack, sir.
I know, but he didn't tell anybody that he was in the hospital. That's my point.
The
And
mad
by the
heart.
way, Pete Buttigieg's qualifications for being the Secretary of Transportation were that he managed 68 buses as the um, mayor of South Bend, Indiana. The cabinet is Trump has said this. He said this on the campaign trail. In 2016, he tried to bring people in around him that would teach him how government worked, right? And then it turned out people like Rex Tillerson and Jeff Sessions were not loyal to him or his agenda. And so he fired them. And it created a lot of drama and it hindered his first term. This time around, Trump is saying, I know these people, I trust these people, and they are fully bought into the idea that just because I disagree with RFK Jr. on, say, abortion, right? He's very pro-choice and Trump is not. Um, Trump is saying, you will work in HHS alone. He brought in a pro-labor Republican, Lori Chavez Raviner, who was one of the Republican sponsors of the PRO Act, which is incredibly unpopular in Republican circles.
Yeah, they don't like that.
To be Secretary of Labor. So Trump is putting together, I think, a team of rivals, people who, Marco Rubio and Tulsi Gabbard working with Mike Waltz on national security affairs. When Marco, who I met and used to work for, represents more of like the neocon wing of the party, and Tulsi Gabbard is basically an isolationist. And you have people in the middle, like Trump, that are more, I guess, pragmatists, you could call them, that say, end this war, funnel this money to this country. I just think the way that the media is using the term loyalist, I don't like at all, because that's the whole reason why Trump is building out his cabinet the way that it is. And if a nominee is unqualified, the Senate will fail them. The Republicans only have 53 seats, right? And at least 4 of those senators, Collins, Murkowski, McConnell, and Mullen, have signified that they might vote against some of these nominees if they don't do well during confirmation hearings. So, like I said, look at the nominees, vet each of them individually, and let the Senate do its advising consent clause under the Constitution. That's just my view of the cabinet. And by the way, there's a lot of really talented people in Trump's cabinet. Obviously, I don't agree with all of them. I think Linda McMahon is quite an odd choice, but I guess if your plan is to dismantle the Department of Education, you need somebody to turn off the lights on the way out.
Yeah.
So Trump is very much just Trump is, I think, is relishing in the way that the cabinet is being treated right now. He's just watching people take the slings and the arrows. And he got Matt Gaetz out of Congress, which helped Speaker Johnson, because that was the first time in his life Matt Gaetz has ever pulled out of anything. So
come on, brother.
So and honestly, that was a political masterstroke between Johnson and Trump, and now you have somebody as AG that's probably going to get confirmed with 60 plus votes. And by the way, Democrats will vote for a lot of these cabinet nominees, because historically the Senate has only rejected, I think, 12 cabinet nominees. And people like Rubio and even Bobby Kennedy Jr., I imagine, will get some Democratic support, because there are issues where there are overlaps. Actually, Cory Booker, the very well-respected senator from New Jersey, put out a video that basically said that he agrees with Bobby Kennedy on a lot of the food security stuff. So I could see some of these picks, the more popular ones, getting 70, 80 votes in the Senate. Where you're really going to run into trouble are Hegseth, given the sexual assault accusations, and Tulsi from actually the Republican Party, given her stances on Ukraine, I think. And I think you might run into some opposition from conservatives actually on RFK, because he is pretty pro-choice. So I don't know. I don't think any of them will fail confirmation. I think Gaetz certainly would have.
Yeah.
Given how much he has spent his entire career attacking other Republicans, and then they just wouldn't vote for him. And he ousted Kevin McCarthy from being speaker because McCarthy was investigating him for sleeping with a 17-year-old girl, allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
So
Yana, what's
Well, I'm just going to echo everything that's been said already. I do think that most of the nominees are good picks. I think at this point, Trump knows better than the first time around to have people who are loyal to him. And that is very, very important. That people being loyal is more important than almost anything that they can bring in, because really, I mean, you don't want to have a traitor near you. So that's what he had the first time around with some people. So and they will be working within their agency, within the realm. There's going to be other people who are going to be around them. So I don't think that like RFK Jr. will completely go haywire and change absolutely everything. But I do think that he is definitely needed when it comes to health in this country. And before I even became interested in politics, and I was more on the, I guess, not the left, but more on the liberal side. I was really, and this was actually a liberal issue when it comes to, this conglomerate of how we do not have control of what we're putting in our bodies
Yes.
in this
Yes,
country.
absolutely.
So, and I'm so glad that someone on such a big stage is able to talk about it now, because it used to be a fringe issue. And so I'm happy about that. And Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, she was a Democrat. And so this is a very, very diverse group of people. And I mean by diverse, I mean in terms of their thinking, like what they have in their minds. Because I personally do not care about people's race, where they're from, or even, I mean, religion is kind of both. So yes, religion is also, your mind, your state of mind. But still, it's those things do not matter. Like the physical things, like the race and the gender, definitely do not matter. So that is not something that Americans, I don't think most Americans care about. I think most Americans care about what is in people's minds and if they care for this country. And I'm hoping the majority of his nominees are those people.
What
I mean, I
policy?
think they are.
What policy do you are you looking forward the most, or you hope that he sticks to the most, Yana?
Well, I'm hopeful that we will have more economic opportunities, that we will have fewer taxes. So this is something, I mean, that's one of the things. Then we have manufacturing in this country. So his tariffs, I mean, I know it's maybe libertarians would disagree, but that is still, I think a president needs to care for the country first. And Trump is actually very respected in most of the world. I mean, I'm
Yes.
from Russia. He's
Yeah.
very respected in the East. And
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they may fear his decisions, but at the same time, they understand that this is the person who puts his country first. And that's what the rest of the world understands. That's what they do. That's what their leaders do.
Yeah.
So, and people will oh, well, I was speaking about economics earlier, but actually, I mean, the number one issue that I hope, and I'm very hopeful, and everyone actually back in my home country are hopeful, is that he will end the war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
That that is, I mean, people have been calling me and congratulating me after the
Yeah.
election back from Russia. And because they're so hopeful, they were all rooting for Trump because they're hopeful that he will be the person who will bring the two sides together at the negotiating table.
Mm. We got Yana from Pop and Politics. We got Nick Marks, and we got Dante Daniels in the house. Ish Talk TV. Yeah, the whole world feel like they rather have Trump in office. And back to this changing of this whole thing is changing because uh I feel like people are tired of I don't know how to say that. Let me say this. DEI stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Certain companies are stop their DEI programs. Um, the Democrats, I feel like they learned that we're not going to go with this woman and this people of color stuff, this Latinx stuff. People don't want that no more. Let's do something else. But let me ask y'all, what does woke mean to you? Because I feel like it has different meanings to different people. Dante,
Semantics.
semantics.
That's what it
You
equates.
don't think you don't think it's helpful? Because I'm thinking like,
I think it's just a game of pitting people in their corners. Like it's once again, it's another fear-mongering tactic. That's it. It's literally um, labeling. If you disagree with my ideals, I'm going to describe you as a word. Like that's what it comes down to. I don't necessarily feed into the semantics, the narratives, what is an American? Yana had stated American several times, and what is the true American? And it's kind of like, well, what is an American?
What is an American?
Right, right. Like let's
Wait,
like
wait, hold on. No, she
their
said that.
description of an American obviously may collide with mine because, like where I'm from, who I engage with on a day-to-day basis, I may describe they're American citizens, right? Like I may describe them as American. And Nicholas may have been raised in a completely different time zone, and who we engage with, he may consider them American. And obviously, if these worlds were to clash, then there will maybe be some gray area about what is American, who is American, whatever it may be. I think America is vast, like that term. So to say that, I think you overgeneralized when you said Christians and Republicans as well, when you stated that, as if there's no Christian voters for for Democrats. I believe that was an overgeneralization. That there, in a sense, Christians voted for Trump. Well, Christians voted for Democrats as well. I'm fairly sure because my mom is Christian. So
But she
I'm
also said
almost
that Obama said a while back that would you say America is changing, or he's changing
Well,
America
he says I forget the exact quote, but it has to do with fundamentally changing the United States of America.
into what? What do you and what do you mind into what?
So, I mean, I have my thoughts and ideas. I mean, Obama is definitely a proponent of Marxism. And I'm not saying that he necessarily wants the United States to look like the Soviet Union, but there's definitely a big push for socialism that has been on the Democrat side. And they actually have linked that to Christianity. And that's how a lot of Christians do support Democrats and Democrat policies because
I
they
I
like to
thought it
connect
was just
that.
because of the abortion and the gay rights. It's deeper than that.
Well, the thing with Christians, I'm amazed that they just overlook that, those two issues, the abortion and LGBT nonsense. They overlook that when it's presented to them that the Democrats are the nice people and that they want to care for everyone and they want to redistribute wealth. So, and they connect that to what Jesus supposedly preached. So,
Oh,
So yeah, I mean, the only thing I wanted to like, I think there's an easy way to explain it as like somebody who studies history, which is just America is one of a few countries that is a creedal nation. We are not a nation that is defined necessarily by ethnicity or borders, right? What defines an American uh, tends to be a shared set of beliefs, values, and principles, and there are very
mindset.
few. Yeah, right. There are very few of these around. There's, Canada, Australia, modern South Africa. You could say the French Republic, right? But when you look at most countries around the world that the West models itself after, and all of the Eastern Asian countries, they are defined by something else, right? When a German says that they're a German, they're referring to a lineage of Germanic tribes that have lived in the area, for example, right? So the difference is because Americans are viewed as a melting pot of people. From the foundation of this country, we've always had disparate religious beliefs. And at a time when religion was greater than politics in terms of how being determinative of how you were voting, that made it the main issue, right? So this is why Catholics couldn't win in the United States, right? Because we were a predominantly Protestant country. And Protestants would say Catholics serve the Pope, not the people that they elect. That's why JFK winning Protestant heavy West Virginia, for example, before Catholics underwent their own political maturation, was such a big deal. And I think Yana hit a really good point, and Dante hit on it too, regarding this term woke. Woke exists on the woke right and the woke left. And the woke right, these are people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. And on the left, it's pretty much everybody in academia. So it exists on both sides of the political spectrum. And the way that I view it is basically the power structure that exists has systemic injustices against my people. And anybody that opposes them is woke, right? So on the left, this would be affirmative action policies, right? And saying that anybody who's against affirmative action or something is a racist, right? On the right, it would be, it's harder to justify on the right, but it would be like Tucker Carlson basically saying, and he said this in a podcast a few months ago, that Winston Churchill was in debt and he supported a war against Hitler because a bunch of Jews basically told him that they would give him money if he fought Hitler, right? And that is an accusation that Tucker made, or at least he didn't push back against it. And it's blatantly anti-Semitic, obviously. But there's other examples too, right? Like Candace Owens basically saying that some of the stuff that she says about African American culture in America, right? Which is just that this like ridiculous revisionist version of history that
And
doesn't
she's
matter.
highly anti-Semitic as well.
Oh, she's incredibly anti-Semitic. But and if you notice, like I think this woke term is essentially it's the new version of like calling just blatantly calling somebody a racist. I guess we kind of moved from that to just being like, well, you're woke, so support these policies. But woke was everything that America rejected on election day this year. That's all I'm going to say. I think that's what this election was. People were tired of racial tribalism, right? There was the idea necessarily from the moderate median voter that said, you know, Secretary Austin saying that he was going to go through the Pentagon and find every example of white rage. And then when DOD produces a report saying, no, there's no real systemic internal white supremacy in the military, he then wonders why white recruits were saying, you know, I'm in the military to serve my country, not to be told that I'm a racist because I'm from the middle of Idaho, right? Or the demonization of white Americans who died disproportionately at a higher rate in Fallujah, who had natural immunity, who were fired because of COVID vaccines. That's what America rejected. And you're exactly right when you say, I think, that the idea of America is what MLK said. Judge me by the content of my character, not by the color of my skin. And that was what united the Republican and the Democratic Party for so long. And then there was this massive break with racial tribalism to keep getting certain people elected. And I think Americans were tired of it. I think they rejected it because it's incredibly demeaning, right? It's exactly what Dante said. If I can't afford groceries and I'm opening the New York Times and I'm seeing Biden talk about how important that it is that Ukraine wins a war against Russia, that Ukraine is never going to win, and we're going to keep sending them billions of dollars to do it, and we're going to authorize the use of ICBMs with American and British intelligence to hit Russian tanks, the average American voter says, what the hell are you talking about? I want to be able to afford groceries or buy a house. And to them, it's a rejection of everything that's American, right? Because the story of America is basically us struggling to live up to the aspirations of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, but making progress there. And when you have a set of political beliefs that divides the country among racial lines and says you're the oppressor and you're the oppressed, you can't have conversations then because you're not at the same equal playing field. It's a different power structure. And I think to a lot of people, that's what Donald Trump represented, was basically a giant FU to the system, right? So when Donald Trump got shot, right, this is why the assassination attempt it reverberated through the campaign. The people shooting him was the system. And him standing up and putting his fist up in a fight or flight response and saying, fight, 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 that was the American people rejecting the system. And they had seen it for 8 years of Barack Obama and 4 years of Joe Biden. And I think at the end of the day, right, they might not like everything Trump said, but he was their vehicle by which to act. And so to me, this woke term has never meant anything. It doesn't mean it. If you go out to Iowa and you ask a farmer what woke means, they'll look at you and they'll be like, what are you talking about?
When it comes to the DEI programs, I'm just thinking like it just means like they have these courses at your workplace. People were tired of that too, but I'm just thinking that it means like just be mindful, like when you're at the workplace, or be mindful when you're saying something to somebody. But we got
But that's been already. I mean, that is something that's a normal thing to tell people, right? Be mindful, be respectful. You don't have to go into details about
who's
person's
the victim. Yeah.
background or their race. So I have a story. This is back in 2016. I was working for an organization. It was all females. It had to do with education. And I was not a political person at all. I was just, I enjoyed working there. I come in, it was like 2 weeks since I started, since I changed basically they promoted me and I had to be in the office. And they were like, okay, we're having a meeting and we're doing equity training. And the boss,
2016.
I think it was 2016, yes. And the boss goes, so we're going to separate into two groups. One group is women of color, and the other group are women who identify as white.
Wow.
And we're going to discuss like how our race affects our work life or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just so I was like, what?
It was cringe. Yeah.
I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. I was like, this whole time I learned since I came before I even came to this country, since I came here, segregation is bad. Like we studied it in school, like how they were segregating people. And now they're literally telling us to segregate at my job, like openly by race.
So
And
And so you go so far in fighting racism that
you
you
actually
end up
create, yeah.
reinforcing racism itself.
Mm, mm.
Look, I'm a history teacher. I teach all about this stuff. It's so important to me that people understand the racist history that exists in this country. But the idea that it's that because think about this: if you're Xi Jinping, right, and you're concerned about conquering Taiwan, and you're looking at America, which you were raised to think of as this great power across the ocean that won 2 world wars and spread freedom and prosperity across the globe, and you're just looking at the Department of Defense pushing transgender ideology on the military instead of preparing for a fleet confrontation in the
Yeah.
South China Sea.
Let's
It's
get these
absurd.
wussies. But Dante,
And I and
last words, but Dante, do you feel like this equity and all this stuff in the workplace helpful moving forward,
Um,
or did it do some damage? 'Cause I feel like you're in the, yeah. Go ahead.
I just feel it's propaganda. I've been in multiple workplaces. My resume is fairly extensive from 2000, starting in 2005 in the U.S. military, U.S. Army. So, yeah,
Soldier.
never been a part of any
Ah,
DEIA or anything. I've never participated in. I've seen it in any of my workplaces, and I've ranged in workplaces from again the U.S. Army to DC government to the most, I guess, it's it's publicized as the most progressive area, but DC Council, I mean, multiple DC agencies, DC Council.
you ain't see
Uh,
nothing.
I've
You
never
ain't see nothing.
participated in
Nobody said nothing.
any
Okay.
programs. I was a bit disappointed about affirmative action. As somebody who
I
works
heard.
at the National Defense University, I am the only black male there. Like, I think there's one more major, a doula there, but
I heard
uh,
affirmative action, like Asian people are pissed off about it now. They wanted to get rid of it, but now they are crying about it. They're saying like Harvard is discriminating against them.
well, they used it again. They were used as the catalyst
Mm,
to ending it,
mm,
and
uh,
one of the justices, Supreme Court justice, actually utilized affirmative action to get into law school, voted against it. So I was a bit
who did?
disappointed. Clarence Thomas.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
All right, guys.
he literally utilized affirmative action
and then
to
he
get
turned
into
his
law,
back. Yeah, yeah.
and then he turned his back to
He
us.
turned
So,
his back. Let's get to it. Go ahead. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. Finish off, brother.
No, it's just yeah, it's just interesting. But for the most part, I'm not really like, you just have to forge through. Like federal politics on a day-to-day basis doesn't necessarily like my livelihood is not going to change due to Trump. The wealth gap is increasing, but increasing day to day. I mean, that's why I really try to follow politics is I follow the money. So
Follow the
like
money
tax plan in 2016, like, you know, I don't think people realizes Yana said something about taxes. She wants lower taxes. Well,
and
it
tariffs.
lowered initially, but it was slowly. No, she said taxes initially,
No.
but it's incrementally increasing for the middle class. It's like they pulled a veil in front of your eyes, actually, if you
right.
actually read
Well, it has
extensively.
to
I
do with
follow.
local politicians too. So that is something, it has to do with local taxes, state taxes. So I think in general, people need less taxes.
Yeah, well, I'm speaking on the federal, and
Mm.
actually, gentrification actually asks for an increase in taxes. So, like Washington D.C., um, in Washington D.C., our taxes have significantly increased since um, D.C. has become more gentrified and more diverse. Actually, because they want improvements of their schools and things of that nature in their local area, which is nothing wrong, but it is pushing out a population of people
Yeah.
naturally when you have an increase of tax rates. So I wouldn't necessarily say I'm just speaking solely to federal taxes. There are increases incrementally that can't be touched until what, 2025, 26. I haven't read it in a good while, but you know, I try to follow the money in politics, so it's interesting. I just want to be interested in the wealth gap between now and the next 4 years. Like I try to pay attention to that, like how much it has increased, how much if it's decreased, because again, we can go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and
I think I'm gonna name the podcast that.
yeah, like
we
we
got
can
we
go
got
to rich, keep getting richer, and I don't think it's coincidental that a lot of billionaires supported. If you look at the tax plan, let's
well,
just
Mark
think about
Cuban
this.
wanted he was supporting Harris for a while.
Yeah, Mark Cuban doesn't necessarily like.
Well, guys,
He's not.
we got like less than 5 minutes left, but I want
I
to get
apologize.
to this World War.
35% to 15% though was the business tax cut. That's 20% drop in the
Oof,
So
2016.
something that we need
oof.
opportunities for business people, for small business, and I mean opportunities, not money given to them, opportunities like less taxes and being able to, I don't know, I'm not really good with finance, but maybe if they take a loan so they don't have to pay high percentage, things like that. That's what regular Americans do, a need. I don't
Well,
care.
billionaires receive bailouts all the time. It's welfare.
But I don't care about that. Like honestly, like that has to do with communism. I don't care about, see, what
You don't
happens
care
in
about
my
companies getting handouts?
Bailouts? You don't care about that? That's our
I
tax dollars
oh
that we
no,
put in.
I thought you meant
Bail,
like tax cuts.
bailouts is welfare. It's
Okay.
social welfare. It's no
Oh yeah,
different than a
no,
food
no,
stamp.
I don't agree with that either. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
no.
all.
I'm more libertarian in
Yeah.
when it comes to economics and business. So, and I just don't like when with the whole the gap, it's not about the gap. I mean, it depends on who we want to empower. So we need to empower, yes, people who are working hard and earning their money, and we shouldn't be trying to take from someone to redistribute because that never works. It doesn't really work long term.
I don't. Has it really actually been implemented the right way though? Like when it.
There is no right way. That's the point. That is
Well,
the point.
here's my answer to the wealth gap. Maybe one of these days, one of the political parties will decide to address the national debt, but that's a conversation for a different day.
Huh. Okay, guys. I gotta wrap it up.
I will say the wealth gap, I mean, the national debt has significantly increased under the Republican Party since 2000. I just want it under Republican presidential terms.
You
Look
had
at
to
George
make that
Bush,
clear, huh? Go
look at
ahead.
Donald Trump. Yeah,
Go
like
ahead.
significantly. And also look at the condition of our economy in 2008 when Obama came into, first of all, it was a housing crisis. So therefore, we have nothing else to discuss in regards to Bush. Republicans claim to be conservative and claim to be the economic
Mm,
expert, but
Oh,
my
Well,
they need to
hold
do
mm.
on,
better
hold on,
about
I
that.
will say this:
Absolutely.
the housing crisis was caused by Bill Clinton's housing policies, but or housing era policies, but
Well, it was the
that's
loaning. It was the loans, actually. It wasn't during. Oh, well, it's
Bill
like
yeah,
Clinton.
it's kind.
Bill Clinton was getting hid underneath a table and still had the deficit. Had
oh, come on now, grab him by the pussy. Come on now, stop.
Yeah, I was gonna
guys.
say.
Uh, that was a great show.
One took
Uh,
it. One was voluntarily. One was
yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah. Uh, all right. We got
Both are voluntarily.
Grab him by the pussy is not
all how
violent.
you see it. All right. We got
If you
former.
listen to the conversation, yes.
Thank you guys for the show. We got former policy analyst for DC Council member Trayon White, Dante Daniel, and female conservative co-host of the Poppin' Politics podcast, Yana, and vice president of Terps for Bikes at UMD, and third vice president of the Federation of College Republicans, Nick Marks. Thank you guys for joining Ish Talk. If we back before, happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, everybody. Happy
All right.
Thanksgiving,
All right.
Yana. Happy Thanksgiving, Nick.
You
Nice meeting
too.
you as well. You take care.
All right, guys. Stay black.
The money in the way, that's its talk. I beg, I beg, I beg, I beg. I beg, I beg, I beg.